All right. I believe we are live. Welcome in, everybody, to another reaction video. This is going to be one on masculinity. Vice just released another panel. They are just putting out so much content these days, you know, for our hungry eyes. Well,
yum.
Today
Vice
it's on,
sucks.
Exactly. Vice sucks. So that's why we're talking about it. But yeah, we're talking about their panel on masculinity. I have my brother present.
What's up?
Zach, do you identify as a man?
I'm not sure what the implications of that are, so I'm gonna plead the fifth.
Okay. Do you have an opinion on masculinity, you'd say?
I think that if you're gonna be trans, you shouldn't be able to be in both panels for men and women if you're a trans woman.
Oh wait, they don't know what you're talking about.
I know they don't, but I'm just preparing everybody. I'm just setting the mood.
That's what they're talking about. That's what we're talking about. All right.
I'm just prepping it. That's what I have to say about it. I think that you pick one. And
So
you'll see.
I thought it was
I haven't even heard anything, and I have a lot to say already.
Yeah, exactly. I have decided that this is the first panel that I will be doing a face reveal of my brother on my channel.
Well, Ellie,
Just kidding. He's been on my channel.
Since there's a trans woman here, you could probably identify as a man and be on this too.
That's fair. I identify as a woman though, so you know.
So does this person.
We don't know. We haven't heard anything. All right, straight from the horse's mouth, or not at all, right? Let's continue. All right, let's start. Thanks everyone for being here.
I'm so tired of like paying $150 for a first date, and then you just ghost me. And the next week I'm like hurting for cash. I'm like, I could have really used that $150. Like, why did I have to?
Also, the trade-off of like going on a date and as the man being like, oh, this sucks, I have to pay, or as the woman being like, oh, this sucks, I might get murdered, is like a pretty big imbalance.
How you guys doing?
Identifying and
My name's Krishna. Thank you all for being here and talking through masculinity.
Captions.
Oh my God, this is going to be
I don't know who Buck Angel is, but tweet me.
I know who Buck Angel is.
Oh yeah?
Yes,
Yeah,
is
send
Buck
me.
Angel on this?
I don't know. Let's find out.
What it means to be a man, etc. Obviously, we couldn't fit every man in the country into this room. We tried to get a diverse perspective, but of course, that caveat, we're not everyone. I wanted to start by telling you why this is something that I'm interested in. I have an 8-year-old son, and I'm seeing him absorb what manliness might mean. I'm thinking to myself, like, what does it mean to be a man? To start, maybe we could just introduce each other to each other, and if you were to describe what it means to be a man or to be masculine.
My name is Tahoe. I'm a black man from the hood. When I was young, being a man, you had to be tough. You had to be hard. And now, to me, being a man is a lot different. Now, to me, being a man is knowing when to be soft, knowing that you don't always have to run the charge. You can actually listen. You know what I mean? So things have changed a lot over the course of the years for me.
I'm Griffin, and I don't identify as a man. I'm non-binary. I still have elements of, you know, my identity that are masculine, elements that are feminine, elements that don't fall within that range. And
the panel's supposed to be for men. If you say you're not a man, then why are you here?
Well, it doesn't say men, okay? It says modernists and traditionalists.
Isn't the video called Be a Man?
Yes.
Okay, well then why is someone who's not a man here? How could
I
someone
personally
who
just don't
claims to not be a man have an opinion on being a man?
feel tied to like the norms or the confines of gender at all.
Well, welcome.
My name is Dylan, and I think that the notion of masculinity is just something that can be possessed by man or woman. Man, woman, non-gender conforming person. What it means to be masculine is just like, you know, changing and like very fluid. But I think that, you know, masculinity is something that just, you know, like you embody based off of just like how you show up in this world as a man and just like, you know, how you go about being your day-to-day.
How you show up. Interesting.
Yes.
What's up, guys? My name is Paul. I'm a fitness entrepreneur. I'm an immigrant. I came here when I was 4 years old with my family. It's kind of funny how we're talking about it. My take on masculinity is not about talking as much as doing. I think at its core, a man has to be efficient, competent, and be willing to do what it takes for themselves and their loved ones.
I was not always a good man. I was not always what you would call a healthy masculine man. And so as my life has changed, I've identified 5 points that I think make a truly masculine man masculine.
Yo, I have a black cowboy
Point
hat.
number
Don't
one
hate.
is a man who walks with God. Point number 2 is a man who
Got it
stands
in
on
Oklahoma.
principle. Point number 3, which is a masculine man, is self-sacrificing. So someone who is willing to sacrifice for point 4, the people that he leads. A true man is a leader. And number 5, a masculine man is never a coward.
That's a lot there.
Yeah.
Let's get into that as we go on.
I think what it means to be a man is responsibility. As a man, it can come with a lot of power. And with great power comes great responsibility. In short words. That's it.
What?
That's from Spider-Man.
That's from Spider-Man, though.
Uncle Ben.
James.
Well, my name is James Killen, former United States Marine turned Air Force officer. Got a couple combat tours, but I'm also a father of 3 girls who mellowed me out. The idea of masculinity is something that I find interesting because it is changing, and I can actually see those changes in myself. And I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this panel.
Thanks for your service. Andre.
Hey, what's up? Yeah, men. I think my idea of a real man is, someone that gets the job done, and provides and all that. I don't even know what that means anymore, but
Us either. We also don't know what that means, my dude.
How do you think it's changing?
What does that
No,
mean?
it just seems like everything is changing every day. It's like a new world order, so I don't, I have a hard time keeping up with stuff, so I feel like tomorrow it's gonna be something else, and people are gonna comment and be like, you're wrong, dude, it's this now.
Of course, they have the dude suggesting like New World Order / conspiracy theory or whatever is the aloof one that doesn't know shit about shit.
Doesn't know what a man is.
Of course, they're gonna present it that way. Of course.
I don't know what Fresh and Fit is, by the way. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. Oof, we got a long way to go.
This is gonna be
It is hard to talk about some of this stuff because you feel like you might say the wrong thing.
I'm not really masculine myself, so I feel like I'm like the wrong person to ask.
Maybe you're the right person to ask.
I'm masculine. He says he's not very masculine. I find myself very masculine myself,
Oh my God.
because I like to lift heavy things. I like to lift myself, which is a heavy thing, for sport.
Christian.
What it means to be a man is to be a adult human male.
That's sort of a very formal definition, but I
Thank
think
you.
that might be a good place to kick off because
What is it?
there's
A man is someone who defines as a man as someone who defines as a man as someone who defines as a man. That's basically what he said.
There's a lot
Identifies
of
or
talk,
whatever.
of writing, of research these days that says there's a crisis in masculinity. Is there a crisis in masculinity? And if so, like, what is that crisis?
The thing that I see is a lot of deconstructing generational trauma. The be a man, boys don't cry, this,
That's
that, and the
fair.
other thing. And I think that's actually one of the reasons why we see it as a crisis, because we're actually trying to redefine what it means to be a man, and none of us have any idea because we're just out here trying to be whoever we are.
That's right. I think that
This is because when, we as men we're told to don't cry, tough it out. Just be tough, like man up.
Yeah.
Like rise up to the occasion, be a man, be tough. Like, a guy and a girl can't cry about the same things because the man is that's just how life is. Like if I talk about if I talk about my childhood, people would be like, oh, that sucks, but you're a man. You could tough it out. But if a girl were in my position and talked about my childhood, they would say, oh my gosh, that's so horrible, that's so sad. Like, you've had such a hard life, the patriarchy, blah 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 blah. Like, so
That's what's happened in your experience?
Of course, yes. People have literally told me when I talk about my past and my childhood that I'm, you're a man. Like, you have the tools to make it. You got to be strong. You got to toughen up. Yes, every guy gets. I'm sure that every guy in the chat can agree with that. Like, yeah, men get told all the time that you got to just toughen up. I mean, like, there's always this test to like, are you strong enough? Are you man enough? So like, since they've already given their definition of masculinity as a man's perspective, straight, white, cis, all the bad things, man. I'm gonna go ahead and
delete
give my
the word cis. Delete cis.
Delete. Yeah. Delete a lot of
redacted.
But yeah, from my view, a masculine man, according to the modern societal standard, is very different from the traditional masculine man. And so the reason these people are confused about what masculinity is that there are men. We have this like instinctive biological proclivity or propensity to think about things a certain way, to do things a certain way, and so what happens is when there's all this modern, like he said, deconstruction of what makes masculinity, we get confused because we are still held to the same standards as men that people punish us for.
Yeah.
Right? So somebody used the term self-sacrificing, and I do think that self-sacrifice is a masculine trait, and I think that is a trait that comes from our biological propensity to go out into the wild and hunt to take care of our families.
Right.
And so
I agree with that wholeheartedly. And that also comes from the idea of like women and children first and the Titanic, right? That's how we grew up. And I know that as a woman myself, you know, I was also taught that men should be self-sacrificing for me and for my children, you know, for the children. You know, which makes me wonder what this non-binary person would say if all women and children first. You know, if we had a ship sinking, then what would happen? If you're non-binary, do you stay on the ship?
Oh, I bet Eli Ehrlich would identify as a woman real quick. I bet this person would decide they're a woman real quick too. Like, you know, that it's you know, so basically the core of what I'm saying is that self-sacrifice thing is still an expectation for us, but the rest of the traits that allow us to find that joy in being self-sacrificial are hated. We're hated for it.
Yeah.
Like because like we've got to be aggressive, we got to be fighters, we got to be strong to be able to go out and self-sacrifice to protect.
Yeah.
But people say, well, keep sacrificing, but don't be the strong man that it takes to be that. But be tough at the same. You still got to be tough, but you can't show any other trait. I hope that makes sense.
Historically, being a man was rooted in patriarchy and misogyny. And now we realize how harmful that has been over the years. And so we don't really know how to define where we're supposed to be.
The patriarchy
and I think the
been
reason
harmful.
they're saying it's a crisis is because the box has gotten so small for just being, say, straight, just being a hetero, right? Because if you do anything, women judge you.
What do you mean anything?
If I dance a certain way, or if I wear my hair a certain way, if I dress a certain way, they go, real men don't do that. Real men don't do that. And so you get scared to move a certain way because you don't want to get judged or outed out of the accepted part of your community. And I think that kind of has us in an uproar, and we don't know where to be. Like, where's the safe place to be for
That is interesting.
men now?
That he would
you know
mention
what I mean?
that, I think.
And it's kind of disturbing.
You know,
because that means that he's felt some kind of issues with it seems like women have kind of put him down just for the way he wants to dance or whatever. Now, I mean, I'm not gonna go searching for how this man dances, but I mean, it seems like he might have had some pressure from women to, you know, maybe the whole like don't cry kind of thing, you know, but with dancing, don't dance.
Sure, and I think that is an issue. I think that we can't behave. If people are going to say men can be whatever men want to be, then we can't get judged for doing things that a traditional man wouldn't do, and that's kind of what I was saying earlier.
Yeah.
But you know, I think that when he talks about the patriarchy, in the sense that he is and how destructive it's been, the patriarchy is not. It has not all been a net negative for society, because society would not exist as it is now if it were not for this patriarchal thing that they talk about, right? So yes, there are the people at the top are predominantly men, and a lot of them are really evil, heinous, terrible men.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, you can't just say that the fact that men have this certain role makes it bad. Like it's extremely complicated because it's like, do you want to keep going on, or do you want me to elaborate?
Go ahead.
Well, I know that we don't.
Let's move on.
I was what you would call a toxic masculine male growing up. And I had good men that sewed into me, they gave me good advice, but I never found manhood or never understood my place as a man until one day I humbled myself and I gave my life to the Lord Jesus Christ. And I'm telling you right now, walking with God changed my life forever.
Can you define toxic masculinity? Like,
I would say toxic masculinity is like what he was just saying, where you're using that leadership role or that aggressive nature in a harmful way to harm other people, to get your way. So the biblical structure for manhood is very humble.
It's violent.
It's self-sacrifice. It's not self-motivated, but it is motivated by principle and standing on what's right. So there is a clear-cut vision for manhood in the Bible that I live by, and I think our culture used to live by, and I think our culture has lost its way.
I think everybody sort of has a different definition of toxic masculinity. I don't find masculinity toxic in and of itself, but I do believe in bad men and bad men exist. But does that mean every man is toxically masculine? No.
We were talking about a crisis on masculinity. I think that there's a lack of understanding.
If you can't define what a negative trait is, then you can't call people that negative trait.
Yeah.
Like if the argument is that there is no universal concept of toxic masculinity, then that means that toxic masculinity is an ad hominem, and you just attach that word to someone who you don't like their decision making process. Like if the term toxic masculinity is subjective, then it doesn't intrinsically objectively exist, because you have to apply it circumstantially based on a loosely defined definition.
There. So it's like masculinity, being masculine isn't toxic. It's just like there are portions of it that you can dive into that make it toxic.
Because I think a lot of what we think of masculinity is tied into patriarchy, right? Which is to say, like, for the longest period of human history, like, men dominated women and got the lion's share of stuff.
I think a lot of times some people make masculinity into a caricature, like it has to be this alpha bro tough guy.
Exactly.
And I find the low-key guy who, is a really great father and a great husband and maybe not like drinking raw eggs every day to be a lot more masculine than the alpha bro who's going and like banging 20 women per weekend and not a responsible man. I find it more masculine.
There are different types. There are different levels. Like Andrew Tate is a horrible piece of shit. He does not represent, a healthy masculinity at all. I should react to Jordan Peterson versus Kathy Newman interview. Thank you for the $4.99. Sure, we can do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure thing.
So,
thank you.
Like, here's the thing that people forget. All of this like bro alpha stuff, and I'm not that type of person. Ellie can vouch for me. I'm not that kind of guy. But that exists because of a historical precedent. Okay? To be able to fight out in the wilderness and to take on all the bears, to be able to make, get the food or grow the plants or fight off the wolves or whatever.
Yeah, survival instincts. That was the natural order of things.
And the world has think about it. 1800s, people were still working out on the farms. We might have had a musket to shoot off the wolves.
Yeah, people like to think they're a lot more evolved than they actually are.
Yeah, we're less than 200 years away from all of that. So like, of course those traits still linger, and they're not bad because they are strong. But it can't.
The good part of masculinity is like being the protector. What comes with going out and getting everything and being the provider also becomes being the protector, and being the protector is not a bad thing. And also, like, of course you can argue, well, women are protectors. Like, if, when I have a child, I will protect them. I protect my family. I protect my pets, right? But it's a different kind of protection.
Yeah, and for being a man, it feels good in that manly way to take care of people. That self-sacrifice thing kind of feels good as a man. So it's not all bad,
And women like to attack that and be like, oh, self-righteous, savior complex, like blah, blah, blah. It's like, excuse me, you're mad about the savior complex? And, we all know that you watched princess movies, okay? We all wanted to be Daphne. Just saying.
And they still say women and children first, but they don't want men to have the savior complex.
Yeah.
To be a good guy.
I think the background of this is that we are saying that gender is this like real thing that has real ideas and implications. And Griffin, I'm wondering, as someone who identifies as non-binary, how does this conversation strike you?
Well, I think that kind of becomes like irrelevant whether or not we attribute like having like a good ethical compass to being like masculine. Attributing that to like the gender constructs which we have made up, which are like somewhat.
Wait, I'm kind of confused about that. Excuse me, like a moral compass is like, I'm confused about that.
Pointless, like kind of just feed into needless roles that uphold the patriarchy without even knowing it. A lot of those things are just things that people should be doing.
See, I need to talk. Okay, so there's a lot wrong with this.
Yeah.
The patriarchy does not, like, oh my God, how do I even start? John Money extrapolated on the concept of gender roles in the 60s. The term gender before that was only used as a term to be an obverse of the sexes. John Money came in and said, hey, I'm going to try to figure out if there is a difference between this obverse concept of gender and sex. And he did all these terrible experiments on young people to try to figure it out, and his experiments failed. People have been picking these studies back up recently to say, okay, well, maybe John Money was right in his studies, and now gender studies have come out of it. This whole patriarchy attachment thing to it didn't start until recently. The original gender studies were flawed, first off, and they didn't attach it to some patriarchal system at all. So these things don't even connect to each other. This guy's just making stuff up.
Because they're like morally right. Like if you're in a family, you should probably support your family. And I really don't think that it has to do with like your manhood.
These characteristics that we're talking about are baked into an old system of domestic life.
I think that's actually where we get toxic masculinity. Like none of us can really describe what it is, but we can see it when it happens.
So we.
That's an interesting thing too, because obviously, like, yeah, I think like, oh well. At first, I hear that, you know, at first reaction is like, what do you mean you can't define it? But you just kind of have to know what it is. And I mean, I'm not a man.
Bro code.
It's a bro code. Yeah, we know about bro code. You know, the women know about bro code, but like, you know, we don't like. I know what I know what it looks like, right? When a guy like looks at another guy and they're like looking at him up and down, like not in a way that like they would look at a girl, but in a way of kind of like sizing him up, kind of. That's like bro code. At least what I think as a woman, bro code is.
Yeah, it is. I mean, like I told you before, like guys are always sizing each other up. Because we're instinctively built to look for predators, right? To find predators because we want to protect what we have. It's in our nature, right? So when we see someone,
you don't own me.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So the idea though is that we do have this sharpened instinct about if someone's good to be around or not, and so like. When we see toxic masculinity, that I guess that's why you can't really define it in that sense. Like, I guess if you're going to say it's not definable, it's because we just know it when we see it. If a guy's looking at and touching a girl in a certain way, we know what's going on because we know how like men kind of naturally, when we have good intentions, would think about them, you know, or do things. So we just kind of know.
Well, there's a girl. There's an equivalent for women as well, but like girl code is different than what this is, though. I don't think that the girl code is like, you know, looking at friend or foe, right? I think that's a little bit different. But girls, what I'm saying is girls have a similar thing where like they look at a girl, they listen to a girl, and they have that kind of like initial reaction of like, is this a threat to me?
We learn it, right? This is something we learned from the world. It's something we learned from like TV and shit, and it's maybe something we learned from our dads too. Tell me about your dad.
I'm a first-generation kid. My dad is from Guyana. Grew up in very humble beginnings, poor family. First time I remember my dad telling me he loved me was when I was 17. And he was like saying like he was proud of me because I was about to graduate high school and things like that, you know. I'm appreciative of all the other things, you know, being present as a provider. But in terms of like, you know, the conversation piece and like, oh, I want to talk to my dad about, you know, sex or something, or I want to talk to my dad about, oh, this person broke up with me and I'm feeling pretty sad about it. I didn't have those conversations.
So like emotional language as part of like how you talk to your dad.
Yeah.
And my definition of manhood came solely from my relationship with God. It didn't come from my father. It didn't come from the good influences around me.
Is God a man?
Yeah, and God is a man. And God is a father. And he's a good father. He's a perfect father. And so I think there is a clear definition of manhood where I guess that's where I diverge from everyone else in the room.
Well,
I believe...
I can answer this a little bit. So I don't want to talk too much about my history with religion, but I'm a non-religious person. But I am very well versed in the Bible because of my childhood and the way that I was raised. And there is a very stark divide. I'm not going to take too long, but there's a very stark divide between the Old Testament father, okay, like the God figure, and the New Testament God figure. When you look at the Old Testament God was wrathful. The Old Testament God was very like totalitarian, Machiavellian, as we would call it now. But the idea back then was that if you sinned, you had to sacrifice something. There had to be bloodshed or sacrifice to atone in God's eyes. And then when Jesus came in the Christian sense, we're talking about Christianity here.
So just a second, so that means that like the God or the Father is a punisher too.
Yes, in the Old Testament, yes.
Yeah.
But in the New Testament, when Jesus was God's son, okay. So you had the Trinity, the Godhead. You have the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Okay, yeah. So the Father is the God in heaven. The Son is Jesus, and the Holy Spirit is like the entity that like made Mary impregnated. So you got the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Yeah. And so when God sacrificed his own son, Jesus, according to the Bible, was without sin. That was perfect blood being shed. And so there doesn't need to be any more bloodshed to be able to atone for your sins with God. But even in the New Testament, God still demanded effectively a blood sacrifice to atone for wrongdoing.
So what does the Father God feel about the monthly bloodshed?
Well, the thing is, in the Old Testament, if the bloodshed got on anything, the woman and everything it touched was unclean. That's straight from the book of Leviticus.
Wow.
Yep. And so, but in the New Testament, it doesn't really talk about that anymore. That's kind of because that's the old Hebrew law from, before the Old Testament, right? So when Jesus came along, all those old rules got abandoned and abolished because Jesus was the perfect blood that was shed. So even so, though, there is still this lingering thing in the New Testament of like, God requires blood sacrifice. He just only required one more of his own perfect son.
Right.
I think John 3:16 is the most popular verse. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have eternal life. So like the idea is that like God killed his own son so that no more blood has to be shed.
So that was a sacrifice of his son. So I mean,
yes.
That's not self-sacrifice, but it is supposed to be self-sacrifice because it's him. It's part of
God,
him.
Father, Son, the Holy Spirit are all the same.
Oh, I see. Okay, so that is his self-sacrifice, and that goes back to what the other man was saying. Yes. Okay, cool.
Yes.
Manhood is clearly defined by God. It is the perfect example of what a man should be.
Christian, I see you nodding your head.
I grew up in a divorced home. When you do grow up in a broken home and you don't have a father in the home, you recognize how important sort of both males and females are in raising a child and being in the home.
Ooh,
there's a balance between masculine energy and feminine energy.
Absolutely.
And I feel like there's both within everybody.
Yeah, if there's too much of one or the other, it can be extremely problematic.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with what he said 100%. I think that there has to be that balance for it to have But I mean, then you have the whole thing. If it's a broken family, that's a whole different thing.
Well, I mean, if both parents are bad, but.
Right, yeah. If it's an ideal situation where the parents are both healthy parents, it's the perfect situation.
The nuclear family is an ironic name, right?
Yeah, I know, right?
And so there's a balance that with masculine energy in itself that I think a lot of people have trouble trying to like reconcile within themselves. Like, yes, being a man, you work hard, you take care of your people, but you got to be able to have that emotional side too, which is where the feminine energy comes in.
Y'all just like triggered something in my head when y'all was speaking about having both in the home. To me,
he just self-perpetuated the problem by saying that you have to have the feminine energy to have the emotion. So what he's insinuating there is that men can't have emotions.
Yeah. That men can't be the emotional ones, right? Yeah.
So that mindset is the problem. When you start saying the women are the emotional ones, and that's toughen up, be tough, don't cry. He just said it himself. They want to talk about spreading the patriarchy around or spreading around this toxic masculinity. Look at yourself and say that I don't need feminine energy to be able to experience and express and feel emotions.
I didn't really have it that. And it made me feel a way, but I think that I always wanted one. And so I wound up at a certain age going outside and trying to find what masculinity was outside.
Outside
and
of
so
the home.
I went on the corner, and there were 20 of us on the corner, and none of us had dads. We were all messed up, and so we all taught each other.
Yeah, so many people didn't have fathers in this generation, and you know, the last one, and I don't know about this one even. It's definitely difficult.
Well, yeah, because the generation before us was like that birth control was really just starting. Like people were a lot more promiscuous because they could do it, and
yeah, we really had to go outside and look outwards for masculine influence, and that really messed us up, messed a lot of us up. You know, I didn't really find out until what healthy masculinity was until I was like 27, 28. So, you know, I didn't have a positive male influence in my life before that time. So, yep, my brother is the best male influence in my life, for sure. Thanks for being here. You're awesome. But, you know, I try to be a good female influence. What's interesting is that I also didn't understand what healthy femininity was until I knew what healthy masculinity was.
Yep.
So write that one down, chat.
The wrong way to love, to be loved. And then I think in society, there's way more people like that.
And a lot of kids who don't have fathers in the home, excuse me,
you're good, man.
look for that father in the world or in a different way.
Well, first I think that like attributing like proper family values to like a heterosexual couple with children is like just not effective. Like I think that it's obviously like a heteronormative take to be like man and woman and then a
It's
child,
not
and
effective?
that's how you create like a good.
That's not the word I would use for that. Like that.
I'd say it's extremely effective. I'd say that children wouldn't exist if it weren't effective. What are you suggesting?
I totally think that, you know, it's okay to have like, if we're trying to say that like only heteronormative couples can have like positive influences on the family unit, like I don't even necessarily believe that, because if I marry a woman one day, my children will still be heavily influenced by the man in my life, who is my brother, my family, right? So I do think that as long as like there is some of both, like it doesn't matter who the parents are, but you need heteronormative to, you know, continue our civilization. So I mean, I don't know.
I think it's funny that this person is wearing an upside down cross.
I know, right? What is this?
It's a joke is what it is.
Yeah, it is a joke.
Family, whether it's like a single mother, single father, or like a queer couple. Like I don't think that it's necessary to like attribute men and women to like certain roles
Like this is like what Dracula's like dirty little secret
in the household. I think that it's only due to nurture those gender norms that we follow.
Male and female matters. God gives you one of those identities, you take on that role.
Hold on, I'll be right back. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, I want this to be on stream. I want this to be in the world. If you've never watched the documentary Brainwash, I think it's called Hernavas. It's a Norwegian documentary that explores the concept of gender, okay, and where gender came from, and what gender roles are. You need to watch it. Because what it shows is that these gender roles are baked into biology. And it was done in Norway. The documentary was done in Norway. And it was so impactful when it came out that the Norwegian government defunded their gender studies programs in their colleges, and all of those gender studies programs had to go independent and private. Okay? So in that documentary, they have big name researchers on these subjects come in and say that gender roles are attached to biology. And they've shown through Norway, the most egalitarian country in the world, that the more they deliberately try to blend everyone together and make it more egalitarian, the more men and women go to what are traditionally perceived as biological, sex-based jobs. Women go more into care and children and clerical work, and men go into harder, more physical labor-based jobs. The more egalitarian a country is, the more the gender divide shows itself as being real, because it's based in biology. And there are multiple studies in this documentary, Brainwash, Hernavas, I'll put it in the chat, that show that even as young as in right after newborn infancy, right when you start perceiving color, males and females show preferences towards certain colors as soon as your brain begins to perceive things.
Brainwash is great.
It is not gender roles that define these things. It's biology. And every study that is honestly done from a scientific perspective shows this. I'm going to link it in the chat. So you got to watch it. It's so good. It's so good.
And now you're responsible for not or for fulfilling that role. There's a masculine crisis because men are not taking responsibilities for the God-given roles that they have in society. And so when you take away the need
rules
to say God made you this or God made you this, now you don't have to take responsibility for not fulfilling what you were
they're not
called
biological roles anymore
to do.
When you do that, you also take away other things that somebody else may do.
Yeah. Yeah.
They are.
They are. Yeah, I'm being sarcastic.
If I have a woman or a partner that wants to take on certain roles and I say, hey, those are my roles that God gave me in society, now I'm suppressing that person. Like, at the end of the day, we're all human beings. You define who you are and how you behave under God. That's what God gave us, free will.
But also, like, I think that the religious beliefs should not be used to, like, dictate how other people identify or how other people live their lives.
Humans need predictability, and when we put each other in these boxes, it gives us the opportunity to make decisions quickly. And I think that's what we're fighting is, as a civilization at the moment, is the desire to put 7.5 billion people in specific boxes so that we can have some sort of predictability or stability in our lives. I was an emotionally abusive young man in my 20s because I had an idea of what my wife should do. And it caused a lot of stress.
Why were you the way you were?
You know, I had a lot of anger. I had a lot of pent-up rage. I had, you know, some combat stress that I had to deal with.
Yeah, that's trauma for sure. Yeah. Like a lot of men are repressing, you know, these horrible like thoughts that can turn into rage because of trauma that they have dealt with. And I think it's a failure on the mental health field, you know, not that they haven't tried, but.
Also, that I wasn't dealing with because men don't show emotion.
There is a social construct that benefits men. And so the responsibility that I've learned as I've gotten older is learning how to not enforce my power, learning over women, over people.
So you're saying that role gives men more privilege, like an advantage and privilege. I'm saying that it is more self-sacrificing. I do not have free time. I do not have hobbies.
I know for a fact that there are girls on TikTok who are now boys because they have said, like, to all of their fans or whatever, that like, I wanted to be a boy because I wanted people to take me seriously. That's how bad it's gotten, right? That's obviously mental illness.
I do not wake up during the day and do what I want to do, ever. I'm thinking about my wife, my kids, my business.
But that's your decision, and that's not like a mandatory thing of your masculinity.
Well, if you believe that God is true,
I don't.
And you believe that He is God, then you do have that responsibility.
What privileges are you referring to? Like, what privileges do men have?
We've constructed this entire society to benefit us.
Break it down. Like, what privileges exactly?
Like, we talk about the wage gap, or if you look at Roe versus Wade.
Men have built all of society, that's true. But yeah, the wage gap is it has so many intricacies. You can't just generalize it like that.
Men controlling women's bodies.
Even if there might be...
Roe versus Wade was decided by a bunch of men, right? So that's the argument there.
But there are plenty of women in government now. You can't say that there aren't women in government. I mean, Nancy Pelosi's winning one of the highest positions of government. You got, what's her name? In the Supreme Court.
Ketanji Brown.
Ketanji Brown Jackson. Yeah, you got
Ketanji Brown.
Hillary Clinton. You got plenty of people. There are plenty of women in government. You can't just sit here and say that men have all the power in government. Just because we haven't had a woman president, we haven't had a female president.
He's talking about, though, like the ones that decided the Roe v. Wade thing.
Yeah. Well, what about
I don't know all the details of the ones who voted on it, to be honest. To be fair.
Why isn't this same guy that's saying all these systems that men put in place, why isn't he talking about all the alimony cases that go against men? Why is he talking about how the divorce court system is
I don't know. Find our father.
It's called cherry picking. He's cherry picking for no reason, or he's not being objective, or he's cherry picking. I'm not sure why, because there are just as many examples of how the legal system is set up to be weighted against men, and men should be afforded certain advantages if they are in positions that require more sacrifice. That makes sense to me. If men are expected to build all the buildings and to do all the work on the skyscrapers or whatever, that's very high risk. Yeah. Why should someone who doesn't have to risk themselves at all have the same degree of influence as someone who does? It does. I mean, I don't know. It's ridiculous.
Those privileges, there's also more men who commit suicide, more men incarcerated.
I think when you talk about like incarceration rates and things like that, like
as
things
far as
that
my
men
personal
are
experience with suicide, both have killed themselves in my life. My best friend, his name was Matt. He killed himself in his 20s very recently. And my mother-in-law, Terry. So I've seen both personally. But I do know that women attempt suicide plenty, but men succeed plenty more.
I think that it's important to like recognize, like, I don't think that men are oppressed solely on the grounds that they're men. I think that men like experience oppression based on like the intersections of their identities, which is, you know, why we see like different like lower class jobs being worked by men, or like higher suicide rates, or like incarceration rates going up, because like men, like black men, brown men, indigenous men, queer men, trans men, etc. Those people like face oppression, they experience oppression, but it's not solely due to their identity as a man.
But I think dating and sex is probably a very interesting place to think about this, because it's changing field as far as like what people expect of each other.
Okay. If what he's saying is true, then it should apply to women the same way. If it's because of the intersection of their identities, then that would mean that intersection is where femininity comes into it too. So you would see an equal outcome toward people who identify as women as well, right? Like if that is what causes, if the intersection is what causes the imbalance, then that would mean that there's an intersection from the other side of things with an equal amount of imbalance. And you don't see that in society. That argument is just wrong. It's just axiomatically fallacious. It's just wrong.
I date in New York City a lot, and dating-wise,
I date in New York City a lot, guys.
That's like asked of a man. Like first dates are like nightmares.
I got a question on that, yeah.
Dude, it's like, I'm like, what do you want? They got like a checkbox, like, are you gonna pick me up? Are you gonna, are you gonna walk on the outside of the sidewalk? Are you gonna open the door? Are you gonna pull out the seat? Are you gonna pay for the meal? Are you gonna be interesting during the dinner? Are you gonna
be interesting during the dinner? Okay, I can kind of, I know women talk about this, like for sure, about how it's just a free meal for them, right? They'll go out with anybody just so they get a free meal.
I've always heard of it like for women it's a buffet, for men it's a job interview. Dating these days, you know, and I think that's a perfectly good analogy. It's really, really not fair. The dating standards for men are not fair. But I understand why women have so many barriers up. I get it, but at the same time, like that's not objective. Like it's not objective if the rhetoric is like, you know, you have to meet all these checkbox standards. Then you know that's not like you have to be willing to accept that men can hold you to that same standard too. Like,
sure.
Here's the thing: the traits that men might want to hold women to that standard are considered toxic. But I don't sit here and judge girls based on their weight, but I know that a lot of men do.
Yeah.
And so like women go, don't judge me for my weight, but you can judge a man for his checkbook. You can judge a man for if he picks you up. You can judge a man for if he buys you flowers. You can judge, like, there's all these things you can judge a man for, but he can't judge things about you equally. That's toxic, right? That's not a fair standard.
Yep. Zach does have a channel. Zach Ansley is his YouTube channel.
Yeah, thanks for posting. That's me. I'm a voice teacher though, so you'll get the based perspective from the perspective of a singer, from a voice teacher. You're not going to get the political perspectives, but we are working on putting together a channel where we can do this kind of thing, but we need to grow more before we move over into that. But yeah,
we talked about it. I'm really trying to grow this channel, but we do have another channel already set up. We even have videos over there. I want to advertise it. I really do, but I mean, I don't know if I don't know if people are ready for the completely uncensored takes. Honestly,
not yet.
Uncensored takes, you guys. You can subscribe to me on Subscribestar though. All of those videos are at my 50 tier. Just saying.
Outlaw says dating isn't fair. It hasn't been fair and won't be. And that's the thing. I don't even mind the inequity as long as I'm treated with respect. Like as long as the girl goes, I really appreciate you, going out of your way or going the extra mile, and shows me that appreciation through her demeanor, through the way that she treats me. I don't even mind the imbalance in the expectations, but now it's just become this thing to where we just have to do these things, or we're just pieces of crap.
Oh,
We just are.
What if I turn myself down a little bit? We've been having these audio issues. By the way, thank you guys so much for watching my most recent video, Confessions of a Reformed E-Girl. Thank you for that. The number one critique I've gotten is because of the editing in it, making me sound a little robotic. It's because my audio setup is like mid-tier at best. So that's why that was kind of messed up on editing and I had to cut it so much. And that's also why Zach is so low. So I'm trying to keep my mic down to try to make him more level. But I do appreciate the critiques they come from a good place. I want to make the show better for you guys, of course. That'll balance audio. Okay, cool. Thanks, guys.
And then when you walk home, are you gonna drop me off? Are you gonna watch me walk inside? And then are you gonna text me after? And it's like trying to defuse a bomb. Like if you think you're like red wire, blue wire, and you're like one little thing and you're just done. And it's like, I'm to the point where I'm like, I'm so tired of like paying $150 for a first date and then you just ghost me. And the next week I'm like hurting for cash. I'm like, I could have really used that $150. Like, why did I have to, you know what I'm saying?
The trade-off of like going on a date and as the man being like, oh, this sucks, I have to pay, or as the woman being like, oh, this sucks, I might get murdered, is like a pretty big,
that's a
imbalance.
false equivalency.
I mean, girl, if you're like going over to his house on a first date, like, have some discernment there. Like that's what I have to say about that.
Yeah, if you don't want to put yourself at risk of getting murdered, don't have an expectation for the guy to pick you up. Meet him somewhere, and then you go your separate ways. What a concept.
Also, as a female who also dates females, in my experience, it really is how you feel about it. I've had dates where we've completely split the check. With guys too, as well. But since they're talking about dating women, I'll talk about dating women. But I've had situations where we split the check. I've had situations where it depends on who asks the other one out. Like if I ask them out, then it's kind of expected for me to pay when the check comes. I don't know. It's like a weird thing. You kind of got to feel it out. But sometimes they'll be like, no, I got this. Is it like that too with guys?
No.
Okay.
That sounds way too complicated.
Okay.
It's already complicated enough.
Date, should the man or whoever identifies as the man on the date pick up the check? Show of hands, who thinks yes?
Yeah, should is a weird.
Yeah, should's a weird way to put it.
Okay, sorry.
If he asked you out on the date, then yeah, like that. I think, for example, if I asked someone out on the date, like I would say, I got this. And if they insisted, like, no, I got this, I would, of course, say thank you. And, hopefully go out on a second date with them. And then, a relationship happens. But
the way I see it is like this. If I ask a girl on a date, I'm paying. But it's a big green flag if she offers to split the tab at the end, even if I end up paying.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, do that, ladies. Because it really does mean a lot to him. And at least in my experience, like when I have done that, they think that's really, really cool and really nice. And even if you or what I'll do, if a guy or girl takes me out to dinner, I'll be like, hey, why don't I buy you some ice cream or something after? Like, I like to do that. Or like, I'll get you a smoothie. Like, yeah.
Yep.
That's how you get in there. Ladies, men, I'm giving you advice.
Yep.
Sorry, how would you put it?
I very much love gender roles. I like masculine men, and I want my masculine man to pick the check up. My friends seem to be the same. My girlfriends seem to want that as well. But I have a male friend who was naturally doing that, and with the dates he was going on with women, they were offended that he took the check.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I think
do not get me started on girls that are offended by chivalry. What the hell is wrong with you? Imagine being offended by chivalry. He really is just trying to be nice. I mean, maybe there's like some dudes who are freaking psychopaths and doing that stuff. But if you really feel that about a man, like if you feel like them being chivalrous is an offense because you have something like, I don't know, there's something that an ex did to you or you think this guy's a psycho, maybe you shouldn't be dating.
Yeah, you're not fit to be in the dating market if your mindset is so screwed up that you can't just be okay with a dude paying dinner. Like, you don't need to be on the market. You need to go get help.
Exactly.
All you're doing is setting up trauma to dump on somebody else.
Yeah. If I go on a date and I get the feeling that, like, if a guy offends me so much, that probably means that it's a red flag. But, you know, and then just leave. Like, don't get offended by chivalry because it makes good men not want to be chivalrous to women who appreciate it.
Yeah, it makes you feel like, well, if I just can't be the good guy, then what else does that leave me, you know?
Yeah. Gotta be the bad boy. I want a bad boy. I want a bad boy who makes me open the door for him and then chokes me a little bit.
Hey, if this woman doesn't want him to pay and she wants to show, she can pay, go off.
I think it's a matter of preference. Like, you know, if someone picked it up for you, like, you develop a kind of rapport, respect with that person. Like, so be it. If the other person, you know,
which one's out?
The woman you're with doesn't want that, then maybe it's not the match for that person. So I think it's dependent on the situation.
But I think that there's such a thing as financial abuse. And men seem a lot of time because they spend that a woman has to be under them or owes them something.
I think that's when you get toxic.
Me personally, I love to take care of my partner.
I like to take care of my partner too, and I like for them to take care of me. Have there been situations where I've had less money than my partners and they've taken care of me, men or women? Yes, of course. But I do not date them because they have more money than me. But there have also been relationships that I've been in that I've spent way more money on them than they have spent on me. And you know, I don't keep tabs until I find out that, you know, they're horrible human beings. But
let's extrapolate this even into the online scene. This video you just made about the whole e-girl culture, right?
Yep, everyone go watch that. Leave a like.
The financial abuse is very real on the internet when it comes to simps and things like that. When people start giving you money or start doing things for you, I've seen it. They start expecting things from you, even though you're not even dating. So I think, I mean, look at Harvey Weinstein. Like, look at all these things. And one sec. I have to block some. Yeah, bad. Don't talk to my sister like that. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, shut up. Go away.
I guess I can't see all of chat again.
Yeah, you didn't need. Do not talk to Ellie that.
Okay, I'm just on top chat right now. So if you guys want to talk to me off a stream, by the way, you can tweet me, Ellie in Videoland.
Yeah, no, you don't want that person tweeting you. I promise.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, brother.
Yeah. So anyway, gosh. The idea here is that a lot of guys will simp for women on the internet and then have expectations for it, and they'll expect you to watch her video. Watch Ellie's video. She explains it in great detail.
Yep.
I love that feeling that I give them that they're taken care of when they're with me, and that's when it's with friends, anybody. If you're with me, I got you.
Like, I guess what I'm hearing from you, Andre, is that there's like a lot of pressure to inhabit the masculine side of the social expectation, and yet you might not get the benefit that you would have expected generations ago, and that puts you in a weird position.
Yeah, well, we live in a city where there's 8 million people, and you know, a lot of these girls, especially if you're really attractive, guys are hitting on them all day, so they feel like celebrities. You got so many options. I don't blame you. I'd be the same way. Becomes
there's
like
always somebody better.
Yeah, inundated with compliments all the time, and yeah, there's always someone better who could like spend more money on you or compliment you more, or, you know, hold your attention in another way, and it really numbs women to genuine compliments. But it also leaves women open to being complimented by scumbags, and it makes them like focus on like the outer shell versus the inside, because it all just sounds the same to them. Coming from every guy. So if all guys say the same things, it really makes women's discernment skills actively lacking.
It's because of this whole hypergamy that men feel like they have to be like that, because we're constantly reminded of how replaceable we are.
Yeah.
That's where it comes from. People do that kind of thing because we feel like we're always replaceable. It doesn't justify it. Doesn't mean it's good. It's not good.
I think technology has a big part to do with that now. Like modern times, like online dating, Instagram.
Especially as a girl, you're gonna have 30 DMs a day.
Yeah, the DMs.
You know what I'm saying? Swipe it up on your picture.
I think that's a
Not me. I don't get 30 DMs a day, but that's because I talked about J.K. Rowling. I didn't even talk about J.K. Rowling. I talked about Hogwarts Legacy. No one in my DMs. Well, I don't have 30 people in my DMs. Okay, that's a lie. I do have one guy in my DMs who is like, are you gonna play the Hogwarts game live on your stream? Like, okay, you're trying to slide in my DMs because you're too afraid to make a public statement saying that you just want to play a video game. Okay, buddy. Those are the kind of DMs I get. But, you know, I used to get the DMs of like, oh, let me bend you over that table. So.
That's a big reason why it can be tougher for some men.
Not successful.
I think what he's saying is there's a toxicity to femininity as well. There is a toxic side to both genders.
Well, I think anybody can be narcissistic, but I think that it's like weird to randomly attribute that to like women in New York because they're being complimented all day.
There's a term, it's called absolute power corrupts absolutely. So, that is, when we're talking about masculinity, that's what we've had. We've typically had that. We can do whatever we want, and we do it because we squeeze, we corrupt, we take. Historically, you take over things, places that you don't like, and you rape the women, and you take the gold, and you do what you want because you have that power. Now, when we see women have that power, we're like, whoa, she's literally just getting a taste of the power that men have had for centuries.
But on the flip side of this perspective of dating, of like the poor guy who goes on these dates and gets ghosted, and it's a struggle to date. On the other side of that is men have more sex, men cheat more, they have more affairs. So if I'm a woman and I'm looking for a guy, I don't
know about that. I think that women have a lot of sex, and I think that women have a lot of affairs, and I think that a lot of women cheat on their men.
Yep, I've never cheated on anyone ever in any of my relationships, but almost every girl I've ever dated has cheated on me. Almost.
Would be really selective. I would have a list of what I was looking for, and the guy would have to meet those standards, and they would be high.
Oh yeah, that's true. Women do have a list. They have a checklist. Is he, does he make this much money? Is he 6'2"? Is he, brown hair? Is he, does he have a motorcycle? Obviously, it's not for every woman, but I'm not saying that every woman has that checklist, but I think that like so many people have a checklist in their head of like, okay, this is exactly what I want in a partner. And like, that's unrealistic and ridiculous. No one's gonna meet your expectations. Nobody. Maybe you'll find somebody who has brown hair and a motorcycle, but they're not gonna be everything you want. Like if you start with that, then where does it end? But I get it. I get that mentality too, because you also want to have standards for yourself. And that's something that I struggle with, I have in my life, trying to find positive men, positive people in my life to be in relationships with, because how do you define what your standards are, and also what is fair to give somebody a chance to be in a healthy relationship with you?
I think that women are encouraged to have these standards as well. They're encouraged. You're propagandized from childhood with Disney movies that you're the Sleeping Beauty or you're the Rapunzel or whatever. I've talked to you about this before. So like, girls are taught from the beginning that you're Barbie, and like you deserve to have all these standards. So of course this starts happening. Like it all compounds on itself. So men start going even to more extremes to break that expectation. That's where this whole like negging and like pickup artist things come from. Is like the whole purpose of that is to destroy women's egos.
I want to react to some pickup artist stuff at some point too.
No,
that should also be on that'd be on the. I'll do it. That's an idea that I have too.
I'll do it, but I'm gonna have a lot to say about it too, and it's gonna. No, there are some guys
on the other channel. That'd be our debut.
Oh.
Over the last several years, the MeToo movement has given a lot of insight into what women are feeling in the workplace, what they're experiencing, how they're being abused and otherwise silenced, how institutions of power have kept them silent. And we've heard some really awful stories and some terrible shit. I want to hear from you guys what you think about what the Me Too movement did. Has it gone too far? What does it mean for you?
I think it's good for women to expose men who are doing evil things in the workplace. I think it's been a good thing in exposing sexual abuse. There's also the opposite side of that coin where women are allowed privilege to do certain things that men are not. So in the workplace, I was working at a place where a woman was grabbing me inappropriately, doing things that were inappropriate. And when you bring that up to your coworkers, you know what they say? They laugh and they say, you should be excited.
You should go for it.
Right?
Yep.
So if a man is sexually abused, the stigma totally changes.
Well, I don't think Me Too necessarily is what prevented people from believing you and your story. And your story is valid, I'm not here to suppress that, but I do think that it's worth noting. Women are far more likely to be victims of sexual assault.
You just experienced a little bit of weakness that women feel most of the time.
When we're talking about constructs, you guys are saying we need to deconstruct masculinity. I'm saying there are unequal biases with both genders.
When it comes to it not necessarily being as viewed as valid, it happens to be the case because of other men, though. You know what I'm saying? Other men are the people that downplay that, and that's where we come back to the talk of, patriarchy and things like that.
It was put in place by men and is enforced by men.
And I went for a walk to get dinner last night. And I walked several blocks because I wanted to check out a few things. And it was dark. Not a single time did the idea that I would be physically or sexually assaulted cross my mind. Not a single time. I can imagine that doesn't really work out for women.
It comes down to biological differences. Sure. As a man, you're more likely to be able to have more of a chance to fend off someone attacking you. As a woman, not really.
Yeah, I guess the attack is different, obviously very different for men and women, because I imagine the situation isn't the same as a woman feeling threatened by, sexual aggression versus a man. I feel like, a man towards a woman, a toxic man towards a woman would do it aggressively. It doesn't necessarily matter where, not just in private situations, but maybe what they're trying to say is a woman is more likely to assault a man in that way in private, because I guess maybe of the man-woman dynamic. I don't know. Am I making sense? It's not justified at all. It's fucking terrible.
Am I real quick? Am I a mod in your chat? Because someone else just said something like that.
I don't know. How do I make you a mod?
I'm not sure, but yeah, shut up. It's not funny. You're not cool. You're part
Community
of the problem.
Moderation. Let's see. Add moderator.
Yeah, you're the reason that these types of conversations exist. I hope that you realize that. Things like the Me Too movement that so many of you decry and you say is a problem, is problematic. It's because people like you exist and you see women as people that you objectify and prey on. You need to grow up.
I didn't even see what it says.
Good.
So,
yeah, you're the problem. What's that?
On now?
Let me see. Let's see. I reported it. I don't know.
Oh, I see. When I peg a guy in the butt, the BUT.
Yeah, you're wasting your existence. Okay, you have better things you can do with your life. If you don't want women to hate you, don't act like this. Because when people talk about men suck, it's hard to find girlfriends. You can't find girls to give you a chance. It's because men like you do things like that ultimately make women think that all men are like you, and we're not. So you're a poor representation. You're a poor representation of all men by acting that way. You need to shut up, go away, go get off your computer, and do some self-evaluation.
And reported.
So that's why, we have things like mace and tasers or having a gun.
Is it something about it's hard to admit that you're a victim?
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
I bet.
And to complain about it. People look at you like, remember Terry Crews? You can get his nuts squeezed and shit.
Right. It's like, why didn't you do something? Why'd you let him?
Look how the world ridiculed him. You ain't do nothing. Like, you a bitch.
Look at we don't ever talk about sexual abuse in the gay community. That's all men, right?
That's very fair, yeah. Of course.
It's men on women is the problem. What about men on men?
That's true.
Right?
Yeah, okay, that makes it kind of scale.
Yeah, so at what point does it go from being sexual abuse to being something that's acceptable? Right? Because think of it like this, okay? If this other guy's saying that at his work a girl was touching men inappropriately and they said go for it, well, what about when a man is touching another man inappropriately and other gay people say go for it?
Right.
Like, how does the paradigm change there? At what point is it sexual abuse?
No, you're right. You're 100% right. But me in my propagandized brain, you know, we don't think about that, right?
Yeah, and so I think, you know, my views on the Me Too movement is that it's vitally important that women feel comfortable sharing what happened to them in public. It's vitally, vitally important because the mob is the only way to get public attention on things these days.
Right.
However, there has to be a fair standard.
If you don't appeal to the mob, then they'll just shut you down anyway. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, the Me Too movement, like, it doesn't help every woman who's been abused, and like sometimes even glorifies women who lie about it and leaves the ones who have actually been abused suppressed.
Okay, Estee, I don't know how you're still putting stuff in here, but you're a piece of shit. I'm making sure. Yep, you're literally the problem. You are the problem. These videos would not exist if it weren't people like you. So you need to get out of these communities of people that are trying to solve actual issues between men and women because you're contributing. These things would not exist if it were not for people like you. Go away. You're banned. Bye.
Yeah, I don't think you can actually like ban them though.
I hid him from the channel, hiding them from the channel. He's shadow banned basically, so he can type to his heart's content, but no one will. Have fun with
YouTube.
that.
Yeah, he's a mod. My brother's now a mod. I'm missing him. Okay.
Yeah, you have. So you might miss chat if you see top chat. It like somehow it filters certain chats. If you
Yeah,
go to
I
where
didn't
it says
see
live
it either
top
though.
chat,
At first, so yeah.
above the chat box, if you click live chat or click top chat and you change it to live chat, you'll see everything. So it's filtering people that aren't even saying anything wrong.
Yeah, exactly, which is really messed up because I was on top chat before and I didn't see the Este guy that we just banned, but so then I went to live chat and then I saw him, but yeah, I had missed so many other messages too. So sorry guys. I do appreciate you guys being here in the chat. So yep, let us continue on. We're at 1 hour and 7 minutes on the stream.
No, so we as men, especially super guys that grew up in super masculine houses, we don't really like to admit weakness.
Well, and it's in our language, right? Like, don't be a bitch. Like, don't be a pussy.
Right.
Like, it's very real.
We internalize that.
Yeah. But that's all examples of like toxic masculinity. Like, it's never to invalidate somebody's experience, but like
strong as fuck, just saying.
Like, it must be obvious that like these are rules and roles enforced by men and created by men.
Well, and toxic masculinity and power kind of go hand in hand. I mean, we're talking about peanut butter and jelly.
You know what it is? I think sometimes we gotta go to work and like if we're caught complaining about it, we're like admitting weakness. It's like you're not a man.
How does that feel?
That's true.
It doesn't feel great, but that doesn't stop me from doing what I need to do. If you talk about a little bit of pressure that goes with it, yeah, there's a little bit of pressure. If you can withstand it, you become a successful man.
But what does that have to do with being a man? Like, surely like a woman can do all those things, so why even attribute it to your gender?
That's a good point, but I think also, if you're talking in terms of biological differences, generally men are more logical, right? More reasoning, more
I disagree.
based.
There is no scientific backing for that whatsoever.
I just think it's a commonly used stereotype. I mean, I'm not.
So I'm just maybe talking about, okay, you guys can say that. I think more about me. Like, I'm more of like a logical, factual-based guy. Like, I have emotions, but, you know, I don't let that deter me from what I need to do, like my reasoning.
Chess is one of the best ways to measure the way that the mind works. And there have been precisely one, maybe two women, one woman, two women, who have ever made it even into the top 20 in the world in chess. Because chess is a game reliant on logic, pattern recognition, rationalization. All skills that were evolved biologically in the male brain because of the way that our minds had to develop in the wild.
Yeah.
Because women, even women who are shown to be prodigious chess, got to be a prodigy to even make it to Grandmaster, much less Super Grandmaster. Even the prodigious female chess talents have not broken the barriers that the male chess players have, because women's brains work differently. And there have been so many studies on chess. There are entire colleges in places like Russia that have devoted to chess and the study of it and the way that it works in your brain. So like there is proof. There is scientific proof.
I saw
that
the
male
Queen's
brain is different.
Gambit. Okay.
Yeah, but the Queen's Gambit isn't even like that. That's like a Mary Sue story, right? Like it's not
It's an
even
outlier, but it's also fiction.
But she didn't she's not like no woman has ever beaten Gary Kasparov. You know, like no woman's ever beaten Magnus Carlsen. It's never happened, and it never will, because women's brains. It's not that women's brains are inferior. Women do all sorts of things. They think about things in all sorts of ways that men. It's like the spaghetti versus boxes thing, right?
It definitely won't happen now because of AIs.
Yeah, like women's brains are just they do things better than men do in certain ways, and men do things in their brains better in certain ways because of the way that the hormones develop. And all. I don't want to spend too much time, but you get the point.
Talk with people about your emotions a lot?
I mean, I have friends. I have close guy friends I can talk to.
You do?
Yeah.
There's an interesting thing came out where like guys these days have fewer than 3 friends. Like it's hard for men to make friends with each other.
I think that's a big problem now in modern times, because you hear about the suicide rates going up. I think that's a big reason for it. Men aren't allowed to talk about it with safe people. So if you talk about masculinity crisis, that's the crisis right there.
I think that men find friends very easily in terms of like, oh, yo, you lift 240, I lift 242, let's spot each other, like basketball or whatever. But I think that we have superficial relationships in those friendships, in which like it's very like surface level, like coming back.
As far as like trying to top each other and like little things like that, like, oh, you lift 240, I lift 242. Women also do that. For example, like if a woman is trying to like impress somebody, that I've definitely seen that, or like, for example, someone like donated to me on my stream, she didn't even realize who it was, that it was my family who donated to me, but then she had to donate a little bit more just to like stay seen.
Yeah.
I've definitely had that experience with women doing that too, the kind of like competition to try to up each other.
Back to what you're talking about, we don't talk about feelings and things like that.
But I guess the question is that a masculine thing that she did by doing that? That is the question here.
Well, it goes back to that financial abuse thing, right?
Yeah.
Women with money. I don't even necessarily think the financial abuse thing is just a man thing. I think that money brings power, and when you have money, you start expecting things of other people around you because you think that people can be purchased.
Yeah,
so
money
I don't even
is
think
non-binary.
I think that men tend to have money more frequently than women do, but I think that the power that comes as a result of money is ubiquitous and it's egalitarian.
Yep.
That comes back to how you're brought up and how like boys are taught in certain ways how we go about talking to each other and how we go about expressing ourselves.
How much of this is men putting ourselves in a little box? I can tell you, I wouldn't have shared my emotions with people when I was younger, but I have people in my life now who I feel completely comfortable sharing my insecurities, my vulnerabilities, how I'm feeling. That ends up being one of the reasons why men end up with limited friends, because, how many people can you actually feel?
I'm not trying to discredit this guy. I'm just going to come across that way, but he has got to.
Oh,
he's
thanks,
got to.
Bradley.
The thing is, like, he was in the military. In the military, they rip your emotions out of you. You have to be basically a trained killer. So they have to basically, in some ways, turn that emotional switch off. So when you come out of the military, it's probably going to be a lot harder for you to be emotional and expressive. So you can't equate that to all men, because not all men are #not all men. Not all men are military guys, so they don't go through that type of conditioning that makes it hard to express yourself. So like that might be specific to him, but it's not specific to everyone. I understand the societal implications of it. I think there's some relevance to it, but that doesn't mean that men are intrinsically not emotional.
Right. Yeah, thanks again, Bradley, for supporting the stream too. A man can't
Thank
cry
you.
in front of a woman. It's a turnoff. That's why most men don't cry in front of a woman.
That's true. If you go on a first date, yeah.
I personally haven't experienced that, but I've heard enough men talk about their experiences, and I completely understand. But I personally think that if a guy cried in front of me, I of course I would like wonder what's wrong and like try to make him feel better. I wouldn't think of that as weakness. I would be concerned. It would raise concern, but especially, is that the point? Like, especially someone who I'm considering being a partner with, if they're crying, of course I would show concern about it. I don't know, it just sounds like human decency to me.
But at the same time, like, also, I mean, in all fairness, if you went on a date with a guy, first date, someone you're attracted to, and the first thing he does in the first 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes is start talking about how sad he is, starts crying.
Well, if
I mean,
a woman did that too, I'd be like,
yeah,
wow,
it'd be a
they're
red
crazy.
flag. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's just
So-
a red flag. Cut that bitch off.
Yeah. So it's
Red
like
motherfucking flag.
yeah, it has to do with that like attractive thing, right? So there's what you have
Yeah,
to
but
as
if
a
a
man.
guy is seriously like feeling something that he needs to talk about and it makes him cry, then there's no way I would ever judge him at all.
Right. So men have what he's saying is that men have this threshold in their minds. You have to think, at what point am I close enough to this woman where I can cry?
Yeah.
Right. So we have to think that if a woman cries, a man's always got to be there, even if it's the first date, even if he thinks it's a red flag, he's still got to be like that supportive person that still likes the girl. But women don't have to be that way on a first date. You can just see that as a turnoff, and that's you're justifying that. So that's kind of the double standard.
That actually reminds me, like, I wonder where this comes in too, because, like, you know, once again, I'm not trying to throw my sexuality around. I'm not defining myself by my sexuality here, but from my experiences of female dates, right? There's that question of masculinity comes into play, like who's the man in the relationship, right? And there was a date I went on where I was feeling a little, let's just say I was a tiny bit inebriated. But I mean, I was fine. I was just a little nervous. It was a first date, right? And we were going on a walk to the park. And I had just like eaten something that kind of made me feel a little bit woozy. And I was like, oh, I need to take a break. Like, let's just, we had been walking a long way and it was really hot out. So I was like, can we take a break? I just need to sit down and chill a little bit. Let's just chill. And like, she was like, are you okay? Do you need to cry? You can cry. It's okay if you cry. Like, I don't know. Like, that's a true story. Like that really happened to me on a first date. I had a woman kind of like almost pressure me into, like, she assumed that I was upset about something because I just needed to sit down for a second to cry. Yeah. And so that kind of shows like she might have wanted me to cry, but why would she want me to do that? So, yeah, I mean, you'd never do that to a guy. Like if she was dating a guy, if I was a guy, she probably wouldn't have done that. Like even if I was a man on that date and I would have said, okay, I need a second. Can we sit down for a minute and chill? I don't think that she'd be like, is it because you need to cry? Is it because you need to cry right now? You can cry if you want, right? It's like that expectation that like me being a feminine girl, maybe like she thought I was going to cry because I needed to sit down. I don't know.
But like, why are you okay to date someone that's going to like cry the first time you get around them anyway? Like that whole thing's.
Yeah, I don't know. Random story, but like this conversation made me think, because that's the most recent situation. And also one more thing. I have dated many men in the past and many of them have cried in front of me and I've only ever been extremely supportive. But then again, I have never had a guy just meet me for the first time and just cry for no reason. And I feel like if that happened, if I was going on a date with a guy and all of a sudden he cried on the first date and I don't know why he's crying, it would definitely be a red flag and I would be like, kind of like, oh, okay, what's going on? But that also depends on how long we've been talking. Right? Or like, obviously, like if he gets a phone call and all of a sudden he's crying, I'm going to assume something bad happened and not just judge him either. Men can cry. It's okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, if you're on your first date and you get an important phone call, like you have to go, you go to the bathroom, you get a phone call, like you try to excuse yourself so you're not rude. Then you find out that something tragic happened.
Yeah.
Like, and a girl's like, well, this guy's a loser. Like, that's terrible.
Yeah. Right. It depends on the situation. Like all of this, like it's just, there's so much of this idea of masculinity is just sweeping generalizations, and it requires nuance, and experiences and personal experiences. But that's why we are reacting. So.
Like you can be open and honest with.
But there's something holding people back.
Yeah,
men
and I think it's us. I think we're doing it because we're putting ourselves in this masculinity box, if you will.
I think that vulnerability for men oftentimes is viewed as surrender, and like that is you know what I mean, that's an example of weakness in which like someone can possibly take advantage of it, or it used to be viewed as such, you know, where it's like, all right, cool, like he cried, oh, that means he's soft, so now I can challenge him.
And this is something that I really struggle with as a black man that grew up in the hood. You couldn't be soft. You couldn't come outside, you know what I'm saying? So you had to take on this persona in order to be a quote-unquote man.
That's not...
As I got older, I realized I still had to do that with women.
Pause it for a second.
I had to be a certain...
I think a lot of that comes from like, and I grew up in a town that was pretty hood, too. I didn't live in the hood. I lived kind of in the middle of nowhere, but there were areas
geography
that were hood.
definitely puts into, like, the danger
Yeah, and a lot of those places at like the hood are defined by like things like gang violence and gang culture.
Right.
So there's a little bit of a difference from somebody growing up that way than in like a white picket fence, perfect American neighborhood, right?
Right.
So like the toughness that's required out on the streets is different than the toughness that's required when you and your friends are outside playing like football, out in the front yard with all your buddies, right?
Yeah.
So like I think that his experience is a little bit tainted, not tainted, but it's definitely been affected by the way he was raised. And he's right though. Like you got to be tough in a way in those types of settings that you don't when you have a more like I guess privileged life. For sure.
Right. Exactly. Like a guy that grew up in a suburb, in Massachusetts, isn't going to grow up the same as a man who grew up in Detroit.
Yep.
Way for them to look at me as a man, and if I didn't perform in that manner, they also called me a bitch.
Yeah, they want a real
right.
poster.
So it's like, as progressive as I may want to be, is the world accepting of that as a whole? Because even if the other men don't like it, but the women like it, I might be like, I don't care what the guys think, as long as the women like it. But there are spaces where the women will be like, look at him, he wants a finger in his butt. Sorry.
No, let's talk about fingers in the butt.
You know what I'm saying? That's not my type of guy.
There's your Eli Ehrlich quote.
Yeah, I know, right? That's a sound bite. What the? That's a tweet.
Why are the trans people? Why are the trans people in these panels always the perverts?
Wait,
the ones like, yeah.
Was it that one or was it the announcer?
I don't know. I thought it was
that?
the trans person that said it. I thought it was a trans person that said it.
As progressive as I may want to be, is the world accepting of that as a whole? Because even if the other men don't like it, but the women like it, I might be like, I don't care what the guys think, as long as the women like it. But there are spaces where the women will be like, look at him, he wants a finger in his butt. Sorry.
No, let's talk about fingers in the butt.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay, it was.
That's not my type of guy. He's not my type of guy, and I can't be open with sex or accepting having gay friends.
That's what you like?
But I can't, right. You can't be open about certain things because then you become questionable and you're pushed out of the safe space.
Sex is a difficult thing for men to talk about, even with each other.
You know what? This is I got it. You know why men act that way? The same reason that women act that way when they are out on their own. Men get sus of guys they think are gay because they don't know what what type of situation that dude is gonna try to put them into. And so they go like, well, I don't know if I want this guy around if he's gonna be objectifying.
Yeah.
So maybe the bigger issue here is that people, not men, not women, people don't like to be in positions where they're being sexually objectified.
Yeah.
And women are going to be more likely in that situation because of the natural male to female dynamic. But that's the problem here. It's when people let their instincts take over and objectify people. And that's why men start going like, I don't know about this guy. Is he sus? That's where that comes from.
Yeah, but I imagine because like every guy sizes each other up. So you're not going to get that vibe from every gay man. Just like I'm not going to get that vibe from every man or every gay woman either. So.
That's true. I would say in my own personal experience that I feel that way about, if I had to get, like, if a general, like, guesstimate, kind of, like, thing, like, maybe 30% of gay people I've talked to, I've gotten the impression of, like, oh, I'd take him back. Probably about 30% of gay people that I've interacted with.
Because of how they've spoken to you and, like, their body language?
They give you that, they kind of look you up and down a little bit. They'll kind of, like, halfway, like, cock an eye and smile at you a little bit.
Yeah, I got you. A woman would see that too from a man and also be like, weird champ.
Especially if you do have some kind of kink.
Because you're not allowed to be vulnerable. You're not allowed to be weak. You're not allowed to fail. And a lot of people that, when you say the suicide rates, you give up because you have nowhere to turn.
I kind of disagree with you on the fact about that pressure is causing. I think it's more the lack of support and guidance for a lot of guys. Like, they don't know where to turn. Like a lot of guys, suicide, I think, is like when you lose hope, right? So they just don't have hope.
What about not wanting to go get it? Because there's places to be.
That's interesting too. I do believe that just in general, everybody feels like a sense of hopelessness. There's this, everybody's out of alignment with each other, and I don't necessarily think that's just a male problem, but I think that like males might see like feel the pressure a lot more than women of the hopelessness, and like maybe with women it's a little more subdued. But I also see where he's coming from where he's like, well, why don't you go get it? But like, can you really go get hope? Like, I mean, you need to know where to look for it. Like, if you wanna have a community of people that will give you hope and help you, you know, feel better about this hopelessness that the collective is feeling, you know, you have to find your collective. Like, everything is so, like, the internet is huge and anyone could be connected. So people like have unified in like certain like sections of the internet. And like, if you cannot find the one where that gives you hope, then you go down the rabbit hole of, you know, people being mean to you because you want to play a video game. I don't know.
People to go, you can go to church.
I mean,
you can go to therapy.
As
There's
much as
places
you
to
say
go.
that, but I don't feel like, you know, when you say guys don't want to express weakness, I think taking that step is hard for a lot of men, because then that expresses weakness. It's hard for a lot of guys.
You know what's interesting? That what I'm hearing is that as men, you also are victimized by the sexist expectations of masculinity.
It also makes it hard for men to love themselves and love themselves enough to understand that they're in trouble. You know, and
I don't agree with that.
I know that.
Okay. Maybe for some men, not for me. I've never had a problem looking at there might have been one period in my life, like one little section of my life where I was like sad at myself, but I've always carried a sense of pride because I've always tried to look at my own traits and say, like, this is how I'm different from other people, and this is what makes me distinctive, and this is what I have to offer to society. And I've never really let the whole like women having standards of me like tear me down as a person very much. Now there was a point where like when you get rejected on online dating and stuff like that over and over and over again, it starts making you feel like maybe you aren't date worthy. Yeah. But it's never made me feel like I don't have value as a man, or value as a person. It made me feel like I'm undesirable to women. So maybe more men deal with this than I know, but I don't really feel that way. I see myself as a very unique character with a lot of good positive traits, and so I've never had a problem like loving myself. I don't know. Maybe I'm rare in that sense. I don't know. I'm not trying to say I'm great or special or anything. I'm saying
well,
I don't
are
relate
great and you are special, and I think that a lot of men need to have that confidence about them. But I think with that, the unhealthy ego can grow.
You got to keep it in check, yeah.
Yeah, but everyone struggles with narcissism, obviously. But yeah, I think a sense of hopelessness comes from a not being self-accepting, and I think that happens a lot with men because they're not the ones who are inundated with compliments all the time, right? Women feel more confident in general than men, I think, because men don't get compliments. Zach and I have talked about this privately too, like how men just don't get compliments and women get so many. But you know, my counter argument, you know, my devil's advocate is like, well, if I went up to a man at a grocery store and was like, hey, you look really nice today, like what will the man take that as, right? When I'm just like trying to be nice and compliment them, and I don't know them well enough to like say, hey, I really appreciate your ideals, like, and that's, you know, that's how you should compliment someone, is what's for the inside of them, you know. But women are inundated with compliments of the outside, so if they were to do that to men and give them compliments of the outside, then it will come across differently. You know what I mean?
I think it all goes back to
But I do think that men need more healthy encouragement in their life, just in general.
Yeah, I think that it all goes back to the thing we talked about before, where humans are still in their same evolutionary state as 10,000 years ago, and we aren't designed to be connected together like this, like we are.
Yeah,
and sure. I think that because
too many
of that,
mongoloids
like,
on the internet.
Yeah, people don't know how to handle this much attention.
Right.
And so, like, if you're in a pack of, a tribe or whatever of 50 people growing up, then you don't have to worry about a random person complimenting you because you probably know everyone around you. It's familiarity.
That's something that happened in my life. It was before I did finally go to therapy and get the demons out that I needed to get out. It took me meeting a woman who actually made me want to love myself.
You found a woman who gave you peace and changed you a lot. Well, great if.
So for him personally, he needed that, divine feminine in his life to help him be accepting of his divine masculine. Perhaps?
Sure. Sure, I think that good women can bring out the good masculine traits, and I don't think there are enough good women. I think women are taught to be toxic and narcissistic by their grooming and by the nature of the way that society tells them to think and act, and so you don't see enough of the good feminine traits to help bring out the good masculine traits.
Yep.
I think it's symbiotic, or I guess you could say codependent in that sense. It's a negative type of symbiote.
If a man is dating a woman and she doesn't like that he's not masculine enough, it's kind of like, to me, I feel like too bad for him. He should go find someone else. That's part of the dating scene. Everyone has things that they like and things that they don't like.
I feel like your preference is your preference, but at like some point, I think it's like noteworthy and responsible to like understand where those preferences or like originate.
Not necessarily. I think our life experiences form what we really want in our dating life. And because I grew up in a broken home and I didn't have a man in the house, I want a man who gives me security and protection. I don't think me deconstructing masculine is gonna do that for me. I was missing that in my childhood, and that's what I want in a man.
I tend to diverge from like the Freudian.
Yeah, I was about to say that's very Freudian. You know, it's why I like blondes. And I definitely think there is something to say about that. Should he necessarily be looking for that in a relationship? But is it okay that he likes that in a relationship? Not necessarily. That's not necessarily bad, because it means that he is looking for a divine masculine influence in his life. But like, should he be looking for that because of his childhood?
Hey, Ellie, real quick, go into the settings and set to where you have to be subscribed for a certain amount of time. That's what Binary said, because this person just keeps making accounts and making inappropriate.
All right, how do I do
Because
that?
they have nothing better in their lives.
How do I do that?
I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know anything about the live chat setting.
Edit, perhaps. Customization. Who can send messages? Subscribers. Okay, subscribers for 10 minutes.
Yeah. You realize that by doing that, you're only helping us in the algorithm, right? Like, you're only helping with the algorithm. So keep wasting your time. You're still a loser.
And daddy issues stuff when it comes to like what
Congratulations. I'm so happy for you. I want a man who gives me security.
Thank you.
I think
Freud.
if I'm with a woman,
What? Okay, so it's not all Freud because you're looking for a man that gives you protection. Like, that's what, like, men are, it's the natural order of things. Like, men have the instincts to be protective. Like, it's not Freudian for you to want that. That's like not, in my opinion, that's not what the Freudian thing is.
Yeah, that's not Freudian.
Yeah.
Have you ever read Freud? Have you ever looked at what Freud actually said? Like, oh my God. Okay.
Yeah.
Dates I've had is when I'm like talking about my problems, I'm complaining about something, I'm not gonna see that woman. If I'm projecting more strength and I'm more charismatic, I'm positive, I'm probably gonna see that woman. So I think as much as like, guys, you know, you want guys to be vulnerable, that doesn't work a lot of times. And I think it just comes down to that.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what it is. Like,
That's what I'm saying.
And it sounds like a lot of you are saying that's wrong.
Yeah, I mean, but do you want anyone to be like vulnerable? Like, per se, I don't know. Maybe I'm saying my preferences here. I want both people in the relationship to be strong. You know.
Yeah,
I think
sure.
strength
And they need to
is
show
a positive,
strength.
attractive thing.
Right, but you can be a strong person and show sensitivity at the same time.
Right.
You can definitely do that. I don't have any problem doing that.
The idea of being mentally strong is non-binary.
Sure.
Yeah, and it's like,
I'm not saying it's wrong. I think it is what it is.
I just think that society teaches you have to be a certain way.
And that's really...
And that's my issue. Because if this is who you are, your character, right? It just blossoms into this person that loves to pay for dates, loves to open doors, and loves to walk in the house, then that's fine. But when society tells you that from a young boy, that's the only way to be as a man. This is the only way to be. And you think about things like, say, people on the down low that don't want to come out till later because they're scared of societal pressures, right? You should be able to be whoever you want without society telling you you have to be this way in order to fit in this box.
Pressure is on, like, the body.
We've seen
like,
the slippery slope.
Pressure is to be buff, to, like, look good.
There is a certain pressure, I guess you can call it, for guys to look a certain way, especially if they're trying to attract women. So I think it comes down to just men who look a certain way tend to look more competent. They can protect
I was just gonna add on to what you were saying. If a guy looks fit, if a guy looks strong, okay, as a girl, she's probably thinking, if I'm on the street and somebody tries to do something to me, I know that he can handle it.
Yep.
I also think generally,
pause
like,
for a second. The issue with that is that that's how men deceive women now. Men have figured that out about. That's how pickup artists work. Like men have figured out how to trick women by looking good. And I tell Ellie all the time, I think that people who focus more on looking good than thinking well or using their brains are just as toxic. You know, I think that when you overemphasize the physical and you try to be that physically attractive person and you ignore the other sides of yourself, you're just as much of a problem. Because like men have figured out that if you can make the appearance where this, like, you know, we're in this big time like visually oriented society, right? Everything's about what you see. So if you can present yourself as this strong person, women are going to fall for you, but it's deceptive. Like you could be a terrible, horrific predator and look good, and women are going to fall for you much faster than someone who looks average. Even if they work out, they're still just genetically average. That's a good, intrinsically healthy person, because it's so easy to manipulate women. And that, after a certain point, becomes a discernment thing. I think that women have to get better at starting to learn the toxic traits in someone's character and not take the presentation as the reality necessarily. You know, I'm not the type of person, I don't overly emphasize my physical health. If I feel like I'm getting too overweight or, you know, I'm gaining too much weight, I'll do intermittent fasting or something. And I go on these like workout binges once every few years where I try to get in shape and get fit and all that kind of thing. But I don't overemphasize it, because I'd rather be thinking about things. I'd rather be using my brain for stuff. I'd rather be doing this, you know? But if you overemphasize your appearance, then you can trick women like that too. And that's a discernment thing.
Yep. Agreed. Oh no. It's Zach in the background. You guys didn't see that, right?
guys who don't have the body that they're looking for, or generally, they're not as healthy. It's not just a look thing, it's just a health thing.
Yeah, that's
you know, the body and mind are connected. If someone is strong, they're probably gonna look strong, and they're probably gonna feel strong. So I think when you say it's a pressure, I think it can be construed as a healthy pressure. Hey, get strong, be strong, because you're gonna be a healthier and more mentally fit individual.
For
That's
example,
right,
I
baby.
was a gymnast, and I think, you know, the training that I did not only trained my body, but it winded up training my mind and making me a stronger human, period.
As the skinniest person here,
Pretty skinny.
you skinny? All right, as the second skinniest person here. No, it's
they call
like,
that
I don't
person
know.
a
It's like,
sheep.
yeah, you do. I've had a bunch
They did?
of girls
Non-binary, huh? Yeah.
like
It's a
friend
she's
zone me, and
skinny.
I'd be like, why? And they're like,
Oh, wow.
you're just too
That's
skinny.
not non-binary. That's a
And I'd be
trans
like,
man.
damn.
trans
I mean, they
woman
kept
that-
it
they
so
have on a
real, I
men's panel.
can't.
That's, yeah,
But I'm
kind of
like-
him to say that, yeah. Is saying that there is a good and natural connection between, like, feeling good, healthy habits, looking good, and that there's a masculine ideal to that of some sort. Does anyone disagree with that here?
I do. Body diversity exists across like multiple spectrums, and I think that it's unfair to like only attribute like mental fortitude and like mental strength to like physical strength. Not having
I
like a
agree with
perfectly in
that.
shape body doesn't necessarily mean you're unhealthy by any means. And I
Yeah,
also
like
don't think
Stephen
it
Hawking.
necessarily means that you like lack mental fortitude.
I don't
agree
think
with
I'm
that.
saying that to look strong is the only way to be mentally strong. I think
What?
as long as you feel like you have a competent physical body, I think that's going to benefit your mental health.
How do you define
But that's not,
competence?
that, I don't
think in
that's
terms of
true.
what
I
you-
think they're
I don't
wrong about
necessarily
that.
agree with that either. I think that it is important to have both a physically strong body and also be mentally strong. I think both are very important, but I do think that you don't like necessarily have one without the other.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I think that the trans person here is. I'm actually in line with what they're saying. I don't think that there's always necessarily a positive correlation between your physical fitness and your mental state, because I know a lot of really dumb gym rats. A lot of them. You know, but I also know people who are overweight or decrepit, you know, disabled, that are brilliant. Like I said, Stephen Hawking. Look at him. He's one of those brilliant minds of the past however long, and he couldn't even walk. You know.
Yep.
You're trying to do. So are you a student? Like, what are your endeavors in life?
Me?
Yes.
I'm a student athlete.
Okay, what kind
And-
of sport?
really?
I'm a springboard diver.
Okay, do you train to do springboard diving?
Yeah.
Okay, and do you feel good when you train and you do well on the springboard?
Yeah.
I think that's what I mean. That's what I'm talking about. And if
But
you
that
feel
doesn't mean you're smarter.
Yeah, that.
See, he's the problem. He's the problem.
Yeah, that
He's
raises
problem.
the confidence. That raises your confidence, and like, yeah, you're more in tune with your body, and it is very good to be smart with your body and know how your body works in case we get into, you know, that survival thing, right? If it comes down to survival, your physicality, along with your mental capacity, is what will save you. You know, not necessarily just physicality.
Yeah, I think he's being very shallow about this, and that's
Yeah.
there are shallow men, and
Yeah.
that's the problem.
Very
He's
shallow.
Yeah, he's wrong. He's wrong here, I think.
competent at the endeavors you're trying to do, I think
Yep, the
that's
confidence.
But I think
what
that there
contributes to
are
a
lots of
mental.
like non-athletic people who may not be in like the same physical shape as like an athlete would be,
Right.
who are competent in what they're trying to do, because that
Absolutely.
like action
I
has
do agree
nothing to
with
do
you.
with like their like.
So that's where I disagree
physical-
with you. That's where I
Yeah.
disagree with you. I think some people who don't realize the potential for their physical to blend into their mental is something that needs to be talked about. I think it's
Play me in
undervalued.
chess, bro.
It's not.
Well, I
I'm
mean,
not as fit as you.
let's look at something like Taekwondo.
That's an athletic thing, though. That doesn't have anything to do with your. I mean, yes, you have to think about it, but that's not the same as being an analytical and using your brain in like calculating and tactical ways. Look at how many brilliant
Ninja
like,
Warrior.
people- Like, yeah, but that's still not the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, that's not the same.
I think that
like
goes
I said,
down to base like survival stuff.
play me in chess. I'd take this dude out in chess, no problem. But, like he'd have no chance. Like, but I know that because he's not a chess player, because he doesn't think like a chess player, and so he doesn't emphasize his mental capacity as much as he does his physical. You can clearly tell that he puts value in his physical being over the state of his mind. His logic shows that he's not like his logic shows that he's not as intelligent, and that's okay. It's fine, but you have to look at these things from a sense of balance, I think. Like, and you can't just say that people can't be as competent. He literally said, I don't agree about that when the other person mentioned competence. You can't say that someone's not competent because they're not fit. That's ridiculous.
Not that you have to work out to have a competent mind. It's that working out
Exactly.
Yeah,
Thank you.
does help with competency. We already know when you work out, endorphins are released, people feel better. There's so many times I wake up, I don't want to go to the gym. It's going to be the worst day ever. I'm in a bad mood. I go, my endorphins are released. I'm great. I'm woken up. Like, we have the science for that. So
Especially if I'm
it's not
I think
like
it plays very little. We've had presidents in wheelchairs that were very
Exactly.
confident,
Yeah.
successful men who couldn't walk. And so I'm going to say that it doesn't define you
I
as
think
a
there's
man.
always
But is there societal pressure to be in shape for men?
I don't-
And then when I just.
No.
I don't like when I'm having sex and my stomach like is over her butt or whatever. Like I want to eat less, me, but
Paul can
nobody's
change
like, yo,
that.
you're fat.
we've spent all this
Yeah,
time
but
like
that's not everybody.
deconstructing masculinity and all these things, but then it seems as though if a woman or someone dating says, hey, I want a swole guy, suddenly it's like, sorry, I don't think that's a societal pressure. That's what that woman wants, and she's entitled to have.
But
It's context.
I also, you know, I have body type.
Yeah, I agree with
preferences.
that.
Like, there's,
Sure.
I'm not gonna say what it is, but there's certain girls where I'll go on and I'm like, you don't really have what I'm looking. I don't say that because that's the dick, but in my head,
But that's not
I'm
fair
just like,
either.
this isn't gonna
Right,
work.
so
I
it's
think
One
that's
thing to have a
fair.
preference and another thing to make like a sweeping like conclusion and then like broadcast it everywhere.
No,
I
people
agree
are
with the
entitled
trans
to
person
date their
here on that.
preference.
Because when you look at statistics, they say that, what is it, like 70% of CEOs are over the size 6'4", for example. So there is amongst men a pressure to be bigger, and bigger men tend to be in charge. And that's
But you can't
proven,
help that.
statistically proven. And so there is
That's
a
a
pressure
bias.
for men who are naturally smaller, naturally overweight,
genetics.
naturally not as fit, to become fit or to become bigger.
Well, and every one
and
of
I
us
think-
here have heard little man syndrome.
Oh yeah,
We've all
who hasn't heard
every
that
one
saying?
of us have
He's
heard
got
it.
Napoleon syndrome. He's got little man syndrome.
That's the thing.
Yeah, but Napoleon was
There's nothing you can do about it, and that's where it becomes harmful. Specifically, like short king spring or whatever. Like a person, I mean, you can't like. I mean, there is like I guess like on Twitter I've seen like people getting a surgical procedure to break their legs and add 6 inches to their height or something like that.
Look at Bard.
You know what I mean? It's like,
for
but
sure.
like besides that, which is like a
incredible.
really expensive
He's small, dude.
procedure, it's also like comes into socioeconomic background and things like that as well too.
And
It's
you're
like
never gonna-
you literally can't do anything about that. I think that's where it becomes harmful, which like, all right, like if there is the pressure in which like I can't date a person or I can't like get a position or I can't do X, Y, and Z because I'm not a certain height or something I literally cannot change about myself, What now?
What is big
That just
dick
sucks.
energy?
It's when confidence crosses the line of arrogance. That's exactly.
I don't
People have told me I have
agree.
BDE.
That's
You
such
have
a
BDE?
subjective thing.
Yeah, people told me I had BDE.
You did in that back
Semantics.
room.
Not to show off.
Right? Even he said, look at that.
I think BDE is like just a confident man. I don't
New
think it's an
speech.
arrogant man.
I
I
do
don't
too.
find
I think that
arrogance
he's
to
right.
be big dick energy. I find it to be insecure. If you're arrogant, you're trying to like, I don't.
There's no
I
political
find it
stage.
so odd to equate somebody's like the size of their genitals to like the quality of their character. Like what?
think-
That has
I think
nobody.
that's true,
It's
too.
more of
Yeah,
just like a
that's fair.
metaphor.
I don't agree though.
That's a fair take.
Yeah, for confidence.
See, but
It's not really like
but
a-
then it comes.
But it's just semantics and it's just new speak. So I mean,
Yeah,
is
like
that
big
part
dick
of the bro
energy is
code?
like.
Because
Well,
I've
like
heard
big
it as a
dick-
woman too, like having big
like-
dick energy. That's just me like being brave.
Well, like, so if a guy like steps up to bat for a girl that's like crying because someone did something wrong to her, that's big dick energy.
Right. It depends
Right.
on how you say it. You know.
Well,
Like,
if a pickup artist says he's got big dick energy, that means that he thinks he's going to get laid a lot. That's stupid. But
Right,
in the
it can-
it's
it's
context,
context.
right?
But now we're getting into like a deeper conversation, which like some men see a value based off the size of what they're carrying between their legs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like that's why the conversation of big dick energy comes into place, because people feel as though like a man that's like more that's packing more down there. You know what I mean? Is more like one, they're better in bed. They're like more confident people. They're exuding a certain energy. So that like the stereotypes. So the stereotypes associated with having a big dick.
The lack of a need to overcompensate to society because you're no.
yeah, because it does go back to like the idea of sexual prowess being
Yeah, related
Like-
to genital size.
yeah, and
Well-
that is what defines you, and that's not necessarily a good thing.
Well, here's the thing. Like, I don't know if you ever seen the movie Braveheart, but it's about a lot of the wars back in, I think it was Scotland. I haven't seen the movie in years, but I do remember distinctively there being, and it's kind of based loosely on history. There was a part where they won, the side won, or they were about to win or something. And they all pulled their dicks out from under their things they were wearing, their kilts or whatever, and wagged them at the other people. So there was like, even in that context, there's almost like it's like an insult,
Yeah.
It's
for
like,
sure.
yeah, that's kind of like if it's small, you have a smaller dick, you're weak.
You're adequate.
You know what you got.
You
You're
walk
confident.
with
That's what did that
confidence
over
because
dead bodies.
you can tell
Yeah.
when somebody's putting on because they lack in certain ways. And men,
So that means when it's disrespectful at its core, right? Yeah. It depends on what it means. you know?
Yep,
Do
it's
you?
context.
me, and people I know equate manhood and masculinity to their dick size and how much money they got. Like, it's like, yo,
Sure.
you feel more
That's
confident.
stupid.
And sometimes that
That's
kind of
stupid.
stuff bleeds into violence. And you see that in domestic violence situations. Like men are like the perpetrators of that by and large. There's something wrong with masculinity when it becomes violent.
100%. I also think because of testosterone and a number of different things, men are inherently more violent.
But being able to control it, that's
Yeah,
that's
we
the
should
important.
teach
It's being able to
self-control.
control.
That's where the
Yeah.
responsibility comes in.
Yeah.
I think you hear the whole saying like it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war, and I think there's a lot of wisdom behind that
That's
saying.
not even.
Oh, George Orwell said people sleep peaceably in their beds at night because rough men stand ready to do violence on their behalf. I think that's a big thing, but the
Yeah,
key
for
is
sure.
to be ready, to have
Orwell. Whoop, whoop.
the
Yeah, like-
ability, and
Exactly.
also the humility
You don't
and the
have to be strong
confidence
to fight a war.
to not use it unless it's
Strategy's
absolutely
required, too.
necessary. I don't think we teach boys that enough because I think promoting violence is
But the ones with the strategy are hardly the ones who are the one fighting, right?
That's what I'm saying. Like, you got to have people that are the thinkers too. You don't have to be physically fit to be able to think.
Yeah.
extremely toxic.
Is there something inherently violent about masculinity?
Inherently violent?
think it's-
I don't
No.
think so.
No.
I don't think so. If a majority of men were bad, evil, violent, a lot of us would not be sitting here today.
That's, yeah, they'd
Okay,
be
we'd still be in the
fisting
in the
fists
in
right
the
now.
in the Stone Age. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's
that's
why
true, yeah.
I kind of push back against that idea that inherently men are violent, inherently masculinity is bad, is violent, because I don't believe
Violence
that's
is
true.
a
Why do you
character
think
trait,
that
a
such a
personality
vast
trait.
majority of mass shootings are done by men?
I think that's a mental health issue. I think that, and this is why we're talking about men in crisis. Yeah, because men are more willing to do what they have to, to not do what they have to do, but to take action in terms of that. And that's how we talk about this, men in crisis.
Yep.
A lot of those mass shooters are males because a lot of males, they don't know how to have an outlet or to find outlets to talk about what their issues are. That's what it comes down to.
We know that these mass shooters, most of them are white males. We know that. So when I talk to a lot of white males that have traditional values, say, or maybe a traditional upbringing, they feel like they've been made to be
Maybe the ones that are in the news are traditionally white males. That's all I'm going to say about that.
the villains of society. And so I feel that pressure a lot of times. I feel like, hey, like when we're having this conversation, even I hear words like patriarchy, traditional society, right? So I feel like I'm being put in a box and made to be the villain. And I hear this from a lot of white males. I feel like I'm the bad guy. I feel like I'm the villain. So maybe at some point, mentally, they're breaking and becoming that villain. They're becoming that monster that they've been made.
That's something that I actually talked about the other day. Is like if you push someone, eventually they will push back.
Sure.
It doesn't matter what they look like or what they were born as.
Be the exception. Yeah. If you're worried about being put into a box that is one that is like clearly harmful based on like what people are doing, then don't do that. Mass shooters is like obviously like a sensitive topic, but a lot of them are like men with like little to no friends who like go out and in like a burst of rage commit like atrocities. And I don't think that it has to do with how they're harmed.
Or they're proselytized and conditioned by certain sects of society that believe that they are entitled by whatever righteous, virtuous thing they're taught, that they're justified in their actions.
Yep.
And that goes all over the place.
Yep.
Like, I mean, you can apply that to anything. Like, look at every single one of these mass shooters that has like a manifesto or did it in the name of their God. They always do it. So many times they do it because they believe in something bigger than themselves that they've been proselytized toward.
Yep. It's not just the straight white male. It is also other places in the world too because of religion.
But even it wasn't one of the people that. Never mind. I don't want to get
wired as men. I think that it has to do with how society like treats people like that.
I agree with you on the point that men need support and they need someone to talk to and talk about these issues.
I don't think that men have been taught emotional intelligence throughout life, right? We know, so we respond with anger. All right.
Oh yeah, for sure. Definitely everyone needs a crash course in emotional intelligence, for sure.
That's fair.
If I'm disappointed, if I feel resentment, or I feel contempt, or I feel embarrassment, or I feel jealous, or any of these things that fall under that one thing, we respond with one way. And if we learn how to communicate better, if we were able to say, yo, you know what? I resent that you spoke to me that way. Or, I feel jealous, of whatever. If it was okay for men to express those things, we wouldn't feel a need to just go, you know what? Fuck you.
You can take any two 3-year-olds. You take a 3-year-old boy and a 3-year-old girl. I have two girls. Their first instinct is to lie to me, to manipulate me, to say their sister said this when she didn't. I have a friend that has all boys. You know what they do? They throw a fire truck at your head.
They fight.
Bam.
Yep.
That's a natural response. That's not a learned behavior. They're taught.
Oh, that's totally a learned behavior. And you give kids only like cars and gun and G.I. Joe action figures and give girls Barbie dolls. Like you.
I don't think you could say it's one or the other. I think there is some interplay between both.
That's marketing.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
girls
marketing.
be throwing their Barbie dolls.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's brainwash. Everybody needs to watch Chernobyl. Everyone needs to watch it because it goes through this exactly, and why young girls play with Barbie dolls and why men play with G.I. Joes. It isn't just because of the conditioning that's part of it, but it's also because those types of things are more naturally drawn. Boys are more naturally drawn to things, and girls are more naturally drawn to things. That's why these things happen. It's nature and nurture both.
Thank you guys for your honesty, your willingness to go to uncomfortable places, willingness to debate one another. Yeah.
This was much more civil than the other one.
It was. Yeah, for sure.
This was good. I agreed with all of them at different times about different things. I think I actually agreed with the dude here in pink the least, though. But the least frequently.
The gay guy with the eyes, the two set of eyes.
No, I mean the dude the military dude.
Yeah, I know, I'd probably say I think I agreed with him pretty often.
Me too. I agree with him a lot. Not every time, but a lot.
Yeah, I think that all of these men were at least trying to be civil and respectful to the conversation. So that's good. Thank you guys for being here. Chat, thank you. Hi, Sean,
Thanks for hanging
Outlaw.
out.
Bradley, thank you for the support. Yeah, I'll have to go back and see the name of that podcast again. You requested us do that since you are supporting the stream. Thank you for the super chats. I am more than happy to do that request. So we'll figure that out. I want to do more streams, more live streams, more consistently, but you know, I get nervous. So that's my brother helps me be like, just do it. So
yep,
that's why I was here today. Yeah. But I think
real
this
quick
is
to address the violence thing real quick.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I am not a violent person. Ellie can vouch for that. But if you lay a hand on her or any important person in my life, I will fight. Like that's where I will get physically involved. And I think that being able to channel that and understand when it's important is the most relevant thing about violence and masculinity. I will fight when people can't. Like if a big dude, even if I get the crap beat out of me, if a big dude assaults my sister, I'm going to fight back on her behalf, even if he rips me to shreds long enough for her to be able to get away. I don't care. That's using violence in a positive way as a man, I think.
as a protector for you know, for your family, you know, your tribe or whatever. I think we're all just trying to fight our instincts that we were born with nature, because we are not as evolved as we like to think. And I think that's where a lot of the toxic masculinity comes from, is that, you know, we are fighting and trying to evolve in a world that is evolving faster than we are on the internet. And instead of like being healthy together and learning what healthy masculinity is or healthy femininity in real life situations, and we are now stuck to online relationships, and I think that's, you know, making the lines even further apart, or blurring the lines in theory. I don't believe that men are inherently bad. The whole like, are men, is violence just a part of masculinity? Like I would actually maybe argue somewhat, because of, you know, the men were the ones that fought for the tribes. But I mean, back then in the tribal times, women fought too. Women knew how to use a spear too, right? They just, you know, didn't, because they were the childbearers. So, but
the strongest ones did. The strongest women did.
Yeah.
The ones that showed the peak physical form did.
So exactly. So I mean, violence is a human thing.
Oh my God.
Hey, oh.
Thank you so much, dude.
Thanks for the $50 super chat. Thank you so much. That is super kind. Thank you for supporting our content. Really, it helps so much. This channel is small still, I know, but it's really nice to have a community that actually listens to me and doesn't attack me over my opinions. So it makes me less afraid to say my opinions. I'm still working on that, but
yeah. And Ellie's trying really hard to, you know, come up with ideas. I can tell you that, because we talk about it all the time, to create more and to get the word out and to have more people be here, so that there can be a healthy, safe community, and she can give you her ideas. As you all see, she's got brilliant ideas that deserve to be heard. So you supporting this is incredible. Like it's so great. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I get nervous being live, because I don't know, I feel more comfortable when I can edit and kind of cut out the ums and the uhs and the dead air. So you guys just supporting my stream of consciousness, thoughts and opinions and feelings on the matter really means a lot to me. So thanks for being here, guys.
Thank you.
Yep. And yeah, tweet me your recommendations or join my Discord. I'll put my Discord link in the chat. You are more than welcome to join that. Oh, there's
Okay. And I'm gonna link kind of Hyunavos one more time.
Hold on a second. That's Zachary. Let me put.
I'm gonna put this in the chat. I highly recommend all of you. You can watch this documentary straight off of the Wikipedia. I highly recommend you watch this. It is so good and addresses these topics so well. Please watch it.
Yep. And if you like just me and Zach doing our thing, I am working on another channel. So if you are interested in seeing that project as it is growing, you can support my Subscribe Star. and you will have access to all the videos we have made. There's a lot, like I said, it's uncensored opinions of ours. Like, I don't even really edit out the curse words or anything. So there's Big Zach. It's okay. We'll say goodbye here. Yeah, tweet me. You can support me on FanHouse, Subscribestar, and the super chats. Thank you. All right, so we will see you in the next live with another video. And can't wait to see you guys again. Be well.
Thank you, everybody.